Hi, second grade. All week we've been working on the book Mackinac Bridge, and we've been focusing a lot on story structure. Wednesday we talked about the beginning of the story. Yesterday we talked about the middle of the story. So today we are going to wrap it all up, and we are going to talk about the end of the Mackinac Bridge. So at the end of a story is when everything gets concluded and resolved. We learn how the problem is solved, and we also learn what the characters learn. So we're going to read the end of Mackinac Bridge today. And then when we're done, you all are going to finish filling out your graphic organizer and submit it today, since we are finally at Friday. Captain Hansen said, "I heard they're going to chop the top off of one of the ferries and use it as a barge. I'd sink the Aurora before I'd let them do that to her." That winter, an offer came for the ferry. When the bridge was complete, the Aurora would be sent downstate to the Detroit River. "At least it will still be carrying cars," the captain said. "What about you, Dad?" Mark asked. "What will you do?" "I got a pretty good offer from a company whose ferries go from Mackinac City to Mackinac Island." "That's great, Dad," Mark said, but he couldn't help thinking of how small those Mackinac Island ferries were. You could put a couple of them inside the Aurora. The April of 1957 brought one of the strait's worst storms. 70-mile-an-hour gusts bent the trees and stacked ice as high as skyscrapers. When the gulls returned later in the spring, the bridge still stood. That summer, the shores were crowded with cheering people. They had come to watch the roadway lifted onto its steel support and attached to the fringe of wire that hung down from the cables. At last, the lower and upper peninsulas were joined. Mark's heart was going so fast he could hardly breathe. There was still a lot to do to meet the November 1st deadline. The roadway had to be paved and the bridge painted. Now, when Luke went to work, their mom packed dinner for him as well as lunch. Sometimes he didn't get home until midnight. Sometimes he worked all nights. Captain Hansen was working long hours as well. He was polishing all the bright work on the Aurora and giving her deck a new coat of paint. "I want to be proud of the boat I send downstate," he said. He gave the ferry a loving pat. Mark jumped out of bed. It was the 1st of November. Today, the bridge would be open to traffic. Michigan's governor was going to lead the parade. Schools had been given the day off. Hundreds of cars would be crossing the bridge. Just as Mark and Luke were leaving, the captain said, "I hope you're not planning to cross that bridge without your mother and me." That night, there was a celebration with fireworks. Mark and Luke and their mom and dad watched from the deck of the Aurora. The sparks from the fireworks tangled with the lights from the bridge. When the fireworks were over, Captain Hansen brought the ferry boat home for its last trip on the straits. Later, after everyone was asleep, Mark crept out of the house. It was warm for November. He walked the mile from their house to the straits. The string of lights glittered on the deserted bridge. Mark was sure that somewhere there was a river wider than the straits, and he would build the bridge that crossed it. So for today's assignment, we are going to finish our graphic organizer that we've been working on all week. So if you need to, go back and look at the anchor chart from the beginning of this lesson, but we're gonna focus on what are the big events that happened at the end of the story, and how does the end conclude the story? So think about, how is the problem solved that was introduced to us at the beginning? Before you turn this in, check your work. Make sure that you have periods at the end of all your sentences and that you have capitals at the beginning of them. And please read over everything to make sure that it makes sense.